Okay, Clappy, so we're going to be talking about the effect of where you position your hips at address,
Yeah.
and then also what movement that would encourage, which may not be beneficial for players.
Yeah.
And then also give them a really great practical drill that I saw on your Instagram the other day.
Cool.
So let's just talk about that player at address as reference. If I set up, we would like to see their pelvis and their upper body relatively stacked on top of each other for simplicity purposes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we see a player would set up like this.
Yeah, a lot like that. And a lot of it's just adopting correct standing posture, right? A lot of people naturally, in their own habitats, let's call it, when they're working or doing whatever in the day,
Yeah.
if they're sat at a desk all day, right hip sits high, their hands on a mouse and things like that, they naturally default into a position that doesn't adopt correct standing posture as a human. So then you see a lot of people that come into lessons that right hip's high, sternum might be tilted a little bit towards the target, and then the moves that encourages from there is reverse pivoting towards the top.
Yeah, and we really see that from that address position. They might feel very balanced, but if you get them to do something like close their eyes, start to bring some awareness into their weight distribution and their body position. It feels like I'm about to fall forward when you do that.
Yeah.
So a great check for players at home is just to film themselves or get a mirror and stand directly face on and just look at the center of their belt buckle and the center of their shirt buttons and see where are they relative to each other.
Perfect.
So you can see here that center of my shirt button, center of my pelvis, let's for simplicity purposes just say on top of each other. Okay,
perfect.
This is for an eye. Now, we're talking about the player who has their hips set back. They might be sitting on their wallet all day, every day. Their hips are a little bit twisted,
Yeah.
especially when they've got as much cash as you. And then
Pot kettle.
from there, what happens is we do see a lack of rotation
Correct.
and the arms lifting, no room, Jose Marias across, everything in between, right?
Yeah.
So once they have adjusted their hip position,
Yeah.
right?
Adopted correct standing posture, I'd call it more so. So basically get it exactly like you say in front of a mirror so that sternum, pelvis sit basically in a line. Head as well, if you use those 3 points as a reference.
Yep.
Obviously there's going to be more tilt and more hip bump towards the target the further you go up the bag.
Yep.
But as a neutral kind of mid-iron, you're looking at a couple of degrees of tilt really, if anything, depending on shot shape.
Correct. So once we're in that position,
Yeah.
and let's say this player has now got the tendency of not turning their hips properly and they're swaying, reverse pivoting, what's a great drill that they could use to give them an awareness of how to turn and move the hips properly throughout the swing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in a lot of dry drills and freeze drills and things like that. But one that I found the other day that was really, really good to use with when they can actually hit golf balls is if you just rest the club on your right hip. Okay, so once that pelvis is in a proper setup position where it is here, which is good, if you sway the pelvis to the right during backswing, that club would either stay on your hip or fall probably forwards, if anything, right?
Yeah.
So a really good drill is rest this club on your right hip and try and feel that you're going to get this club to fall behind you. There you go.
Yeah, wow.
Perfect.
Yeah. And I feel intuitively what happens when you bring your focus to achieving an outcome like that. Now, I can sense a shift of pressure to allow that to happen. That's what we see with the pros, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
shift their pressure, then that facilitates this rotation of the body. And with the objective of getting the club falling behind you, well, then that covers the basis of ensuring you're actually getting some depth to your hip turn and rotating.
Correct. Yeah. And like you said, with the pressure shift, there's always a couple inches. You see Stenson does it a lot. He's probably one of the most notable, where he kind of starts left and kind of shifts into that right foot. But then from there, the recentering of the pelvis, I feel, and one of my main variables I like to teach is quite centered, quite stacked on top of the golf ball to the top.
Yeah. And just using my pelvis as a reference, once again, from the address position, we see upper and lower body on top. Then if I was just moving that golf club behind me, what we would tend to see, I'll get you to put that club one more time for me. As I begin to move that behind me, we'll notice that my hips are turning in a circle, right?
Correct.
So if we see that this trail hip actually stays too much against where it started, you'll notice how the left side of my pelvis moves towards the target. So
Yeah, and if you think that your pelvis is like an oval shape, right, that's why you should create about an inch or two space on the right hip. Because as you rotate that, that's when, obviously, instead of it being rounded and square here, or rounded and square, instead of being oval shaped here, as you rotate that and stay centered, that obviously moves it
creates some
inside that
space.
location there and creates that space.
Yeah, so that's a great drill that anyone can practice at home. The only thing that I would say is when you are working on this one here, guys, let's make sure that you have some intent of making a swing which is at a ball down on the ground.
Yeah.
Right? Even if it's an air swing, just imagine you're having full speed attempts at it, because we do see that a lot of players will do drills and they'll be standing up here and make like a half-hearted baseball swing or something similar like that. Pretend you're actually ready to go. You're doing your pre-shot routine, focusing on moving that club behind and then through.
Yeah, good there.
Right? And that just felt like, even then, I felt a lot more of an exaggeration, which is key for players to improve
Absolutely.
their games
Yeah, absolutely.
as they're moving into that position. Anything else, mate, before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, with pelvis rotation, that kind of sums it up. I mean, you touched base on it a little bit in the sense that you need to understand what your intention is. Obviously, whether you're hitting draws, fades, that could depend on how much tilt you then have it set up with any club. Obviously, the more tilt this way, you're going to be a little bit more draw biased because you encourage a little bit more of a draw pivot. The more you're this way, the more fade you are. So understanding that as well and connecting the dots with what you're trying to do is really important.
Yeah, great. Okay, so first number one check, I'm just going to get my golf club here, mate.
That's it. Good.
Ensure that I've got the upper and lower body on top, and I can even just do this as a visual guide for that.
Awesome.
Club behind, and then from there, just getting the sensation, imagining that club moving back and behind, see how it comes off. Nice strong pivot, felt good, low point after.
Good there, mate.